So today's business leaders know that digital is the future, but typically only have a hazy idea of the possibilities. The bottom line is that digital innovation is less about technology and more about transformation. And IT has an essential role to demonstrating what's possible. All right, so we will be welcoming back Tim Derrickson, our very security expert. Now, we haven't had much time with Tim this season, so I'm really excited to have him back. And we're going to be discussing a very crucial topic. Now, this season, we've explored AI, risk management, e-commerce business strategies, and more. But the more we discuss these topics, the more we realize we haven't dedicated an episode to the vital role of IT in any business. So today, we're going to be delivering a complete guide for business owners on finding their right IT partners. Let's dive in, man. We're going to be talking about IT. We're going to be talking about how can a business owner feel comfortable picking the right IT partner, what they should be looking for, should they be looking for one, things like that.
Okay.
And I figured if anybody knew a thing or two,
One or two,
it would be you. Let me ask you a quick question. Well, let me start off with this thing, because most people have a misunderstanding. What is an MSP, right? And an MSP, basically, the acronym is Managed Service Provider. But people don't really get why is it called an MSP? What a managed service provider? What is that? And so for me, it's point blank. It's an outsourced IT service provider. It's somebody that a business can outsource a little bit, all the way to here, take it all, right?
absolutely.
And so what I've learned over the years is that most internal IT teams, whether it's just one person part-time, one person full-time, they typically don't have a lot of time on their hands.
No, they usually don't.
Yeah, and so keeping up with like the latest trends in IT, and maybe even more importantly, keeping up with the latest trends when it comes to security is not a part-time gig.
No, it's not. And I think it's interesting too, because we say managed provider, right?
Right.
What is a provider? Provider is
It could be
you come
insurance.
to me, you say this is what I want, and I go, okay, here you go. I'm going to provide this to you.
Right.
And I think that we do need to change the way that this is seen in the industry, because we shouldn't be a provider, we should be a partner. Because it's ever evolving once we get inside and we start working with a client to see what their environment is. Everybody's at a different part in their journey, whether with IT or security.
Right.
So I think that we need to try and stay away from that provider, old technology terminology.
Okay.
And it rhymes.
Yeah, and I think partner is really a good viewpoint, because when I go out and talk to business leadership, a lot of times IT is just sort of is relegated. It's sort of outside of leadership, and it just sort of has to respond to what leadership is looking for. And we found that if they bring IT into leadership, it's a much more harmonious and productive relationship. Have you had any experience with that?
Yeah, I would. I think it's interesting too in the fact, so you had talked about it's usually someone internal that's overwhelmed. A lot of your small and medium businesses, their IT, they don't have an IT director, or they don't have a CIO, they have a CFO. And they have that CFO running the IT department. So you have a CFO who has his own job with finance, making sure that everything's running in the company, handling the IT side of the house as they can, to the resource, that one person who's running around fixing all the different computers is actually a salesman or something other than the IT guy, because it's usually relegated to someone who has an idea or has an interest in it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think in most small businesses, that's what you're finding. You're finding these people who are just overwhelmed with what they're doing. And we're in the industry, and at times we have trouble keeping up with these changes. AI has made such a huge difference in the way that everything's going on. So if we're having trouble keeping up, and we do keep up, but imagine that poor person whose their job is something other than IT.
Yeah, absolutely. No, all good points. And So, based on that workload that you see internal folks um, have you seen where augmenting, with an IT provider like us,
Hmm.
is helpful?
Oh, I think, yeah. I think that anytime that you can augment with something who actually has the expertise in whatever it is that you want to do. Um, it's interesting that we see when we're coming into a lot of these companies that we're helping, that when we come in, they really don't have a solid foundation on what IT really is.
Mhm.
And it's, that's just the IT side of the house. What do they have? What's being used? How's it being used? They understand the cost of it a lot of the times because that's the first thing that everybody complains about is it costs too much or it costs to change.
It does cost a lot. Yeah.
So yeah, I think that it's important to remember that when you're looking at pulling all this together, that when you bring someone in, we're here to help. And that's what it should be too. And I think that's a lot of it. We're not here to relegate. We're not here to demand.
Mhm.
We have our standards, but we go by best practices so that it's everybody's, or it should be everybody's standards, not always. So when we come in and we go, this is what it should be. I mean, they could go look anywhere and say that is best practice. That's where we should be aligning.
Yeah, but I think you might be uh, not giving best practices or standards on alignment the credit that they deserve, because you said earlier, and I've seen it, that lots of internal staff are breathing through a straw and barely staying afloat. And so now, in the last 6 months, you haven't read a single article
Right.
on new and improved Active Directory, principles or practices for Windows Server, or new
We're
new
going
new attack vectors or modified attack vectors in security. Right? They've
right.
just been like, oh my God, I've just and I got a vacation coming up, and there's no way. And so, what I feel that this is where one of the biggest augmentations that we can provide our clients, even if they have an IT person or a team, is some leadership and some current relevant information.
Oh, absolutely.
Because I bet you're not reading the latest Dune book or something like that. You might on vacation,
No, I don't have time.
but you're probably reading trade magazines and blogs and whatnot, YouTube videos, all that, as far as what's going on and staying current.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
And or training, right? So we have to make sure that
sure.
everybody's up with Active Directory to enter ID. How has that changed? Setting up cross connects, working with the latest networking. What's the vulnerabilities with all the networking stuff out there?
Right.
Who do we go to? What do we do? And I wouldn't. I think that standards and alignment are perfect. It's where everybody should be running. Everybody gets into this. I don't want to say highfalutin, but it's kind of like they want to go to the biggest and greatest and latest. And sometimes it's just those basic steps that you need to take to get into it so that you have a solid foundation before you start trying to play around with an environment.
Right. And you mentioned earlier, and it's sort of an obvious component to a business owner selecting um, outsourced help in this arena. And cheaper is always better, right?
No, I'm just going to leave it as no.
What?
um,
You mean
you get what you pay for. And I don't think there's, I think it's interesting. My father always told me when we were growing up, he says, you don't always have to buy the most expensive to get the best.
that's
He
true?
goes, but if you buy the least expensive, you're not getting what you're paying for.
It's great. It's a great
So,
thing. Well, the thing is that MSPs are 90% service based,
yes.
and service today, and that may change as AI evolves into our industry, which it will, is labor.
Yeah.
And I'm sure small business owners have had staff that they didn't pay, a lot, and maybe they were lucky every now and then and got a decent producer, but more times than not, they probably didn't. And so my point on this is that do you go to the cheapest doctor when you have a problem? Like, do you go, oh, you know what, my heart's kind of skipping beats. Yellow Pages,
Doctors
cheapest
are
heart
us.
doctor, uh, and I'm going to go there. No, you look for the best that you can get. And I think with IT and security, without IT, you have no business today.
Correct.
Without security, you in the near future will have no business.
Yeah, that's actually really interesting. It's security and IT, they're different, and you and I have discussed this many times that they're so different. And IT people don't understand security, but security people have to understand IT. And
Yeah.
so when you start getting into that realm, you get what you pay for. Um, there's very specific things we do to secure our environment and to secure our clients' environments. So I think that if you're going for the cheapest, or if you're going for a provider, this is what I want, then that's what you're going to get. But that doesn't mean you're going to get a partner who's going to look at your environment and say, this is what you need. Our wants are not always our needs, right?
Sure.
And then what we need and what we want are usually two different things.
Right. So you're talking about leadership.
Leadership
Right.
development.
And, so outsourced IT providers tend to fall in two buckets. They do less than $1 million a year. They are mom and pops, and they have maybe 1 to 3 or 4 employees. And so you've got an owner who's the salesperson and also the IT person. And they're great because they'll probably be around 24/7. I mean, because they have to survive, right? But what would happen is, what would happen if that person had a severe accident or something like that? They could be really left in the lurches. And the other side of the spectrum is, VC money, like where they consolidate 50 MSPs, and their clients are now just a small a fish in a ginormous pond. And when they need something, they can finally get to their original person, and 3 days later get their help. So they'll get it. Or you can work with the right sized company where you have an intimate relationship with a small team that is committed to your success.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's to have that depth is what we call it, right? So if I have talent and depth, if I know that when I go to this place, whatever it is,
Right.
you can come to us, you can call us, and if I'm your security officer and you can't get to me, there's someone else you can talk to. You're not
Right.
going to be stuck in a lurch. And the same on the network side, the IT side, which is where we're, kind of hitting there is if you're looking at your IT, you want to be able to call them up and go, if George is your network administrator who usually handles everything and you call up and George isn't there, well, who gets it? We have plenty of people on that bench that can turn around and come back in behind him and fill in that spot until George comes back.
Good.
And you also don't lose the documentation, right? So you have that consistent flow of understanding and environment.
All right, perfect. And so, cheap commercial right now, everything that we're talking about for the most part is contained right here in Tame the Tech Beast. That's why I wrote it, because I find that most small and medium-sized business owners, they want to focus on their business, and they don't really know or want to take the time to learn a lot about IT and cybersecurity, right? And so how can they actually interview and hire an outsourced tech company and feel comfortable about it? And internally, the IT person's so fearful of losing their job, they're not going to make this easy.
Well, I think it works both ways on that one, though, because you have the IT person who's so overwhelmed that they'll take any help they can get.
Sure.
And so they're happy about it. And then you have those people that are happy where
Right.
they are and they think that they've got everything done and they don't make it easy, right?
Sure.
We've had plenty of times where we've talked to these people and they're balking at what we're asking about. But I think that if you're gonna be start looking at getting that help, becoming a partner of a managed service partner. I think that some of the things that you just need to look at is one is look at the depth on their bench. How many people do you have in place? If I call in at whatever time, am I going to get a person or am I going to get a voicemail? And understand what that SLA is, right? The service level agreement. How are you going to handle what we're doing?
Good. Yeah, all good points. And these points are in the book. And if you want, you can download it. The link will be somewhere below. So be sure to go ahead and get a copy of the book. All right. So we're talking about some important issues, and we're talking about technology. I just want to shift it for a little bit to technology. Can you think of any downsides to or potential downsides to a business who relies heavily on technology, which every business does, and doesn't take the IT component, the management, the leadership component seriously? Like, what are some of the issues that a business
Oh,
can
the
run into?
downsides of this. So actually, the biggest one I think really is when it doesn't perform the way it's supposed to, and you have nowhere to go with it. So now you're stuck with you don't understand what the application may be or what it's supposed to do, or you might even understand what it does, but you don't know what its competitors are. So that when it's not functioning and you have to move or pivot, where do you go? What do you do? And when the IT's not working, that's a whole different thing. You know, do you have a server go out? You have a UPS go out? You have a switch go out? How do you quickly pivot and once again get that redundancy in place so that you're able to
Yeah, you're bringing up great points.
move
Sorry, I get
forward?
excited because I want to jump in. But go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Yeah. So, if a small and medium-sized business owner isn't necessarily, not all, there's no generalities here, but if many small and medium-sized business owners are not comfortable interviewing an outsourced IT, they're going to throw it back to their IT person to do that. And the thing is what I've seen so often is that they're actually being held hostage.
Absolutely. And we've seen that many times.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, we go in as a replacement, and they won't give us passwords,
Correct.
or they won't give us any guidance whatsoever because they're just so sour.
Yeah. And I think that's something too that a lot of people don't really get. And I think it's really interesting that you brought that up. Sometimes it's not a fit. So you go to that small MSP, that big MSP, the medium MSP, and you start talking to them. Culture is so important. How well do they communicate? How well do they get along with the people in place? And back to what you were saying, providing the leadership gives that CEO, president, owner time to focus on sales and doing what they want to do to grow the business and have someone sitting behind them that's going to look at that IT and go, this is what you have in place. This is what you need. This is how you get there. And here's your budget.
Yes. And so if I was a small and medium-sized business owner that didn't do what I did for a living, I would rather have a third party arm's length distance relationship with a firm that is sort of their whole job is to protect me.
Mhm.
There's no internal politics. There's no like who works for who and what's the correct. So to me, having somebody over here that just like cares about me and my business, and comes to me and says, "We got a problem," and I don't have to worry about it being filtered a certain way. So I can't stress it enough. And within our company, we actually have a no hostage guarantee, just to close out on this hostage component. So,
Right.
in the rare situation where somebody leaves us because they get acquired by another business, and the mothership already has a team and they're fine.
Yeah.
That we're going to make it so easy to turn the keys over and everything over to those people.
Well, I think that we're confident enough in what we do and how we do it that it does happen. You're going to have that turnover, right? We're going to have people come to us. We're going to have people leave us at
Sure.
times. But our whole job is to make that client the best they can be. And if that means they need to move on, then they need to move on. Us
100%.
causing any issues is not going to help them promote their business or do better in what they do or look at MSPs in a fond light, which we don't want because we want them coming to us knowing that they understand.
Right.
We're not going to hold them hostage.
Absolutely. Yeah. And another thing I think about when I think about this downside component is when a small and medium-sized business owner is relying on their IT person to also know security. It's not that they don't. I mean, there is definitely low-hanging fruit like, antivirus, anti-malware, spam, filtering software, things like that. I mean, there's tools out there, right? And they can roll them out. And but isn't that just part? I find that that's just part of the equation.
Yeah.
And so having a company that has security experts like you you have a distinct advantage of being able to look at security totally different than an IT
Well, yeah, that's what we're trained to do. But, and I get excited. This is where I get excited, right?
Okay.
So we start talking about antivirus, anti-malware. When we do pen testing, it takes about, what, 3 seconds to get past it anyway? It's antivirus and anti-malware is there for just that, antivirus and anti-malware, not for someone who actually knows what they're doing, going in, trying to get it to evade it. And they're getting better. A lot of them are getting better. So it's, it takes us an extra 5 minutes when the ones that catch us do catch us to get around them again. So you want to have defense in depth. And this has been going on forever at this point with security. You want multiple pieces in place so that when they do get by that antivirus, that
And they will.
or that EDR, that MDR, whatever it is,
They will.
and they will. There's something else behind it working with it, whether it's zero trust, application whitelisting, whatever we want to call it, some other endpoint agent that's also working in the background to protect you.
Yeah, I think you could be analogous to, there's offense and there's defense, and you do both. But if and when somebody breaks through the offense and now we're on defense, you need to know that you've set things up and traps to capture them and to identify that they're even there
Yes,
before they can actually cause harm.
right. And yes.
So, yeah, go ahead.
So yeah, so you have your blue team, your defense, and your red team, and their specializations. I'm
Right.
purple, so I actually sit in the middle, and that's my specialization. Whereas I don't dive as deep as the straight blue team or red team. It's a lot of fun to sit in the middle, and I get to learn rapidly what's going on both sides.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, cool. So I think we're trying to make the point that prioritizing IT should be at close to the top of the list that a small and or business, a medium-sized business owner should do. And I'm sure they don't, just because they, again, maybe this is a foreign topic to them. So read the book.
I think a lot of it
And,
has to do too with when it comes to IT. Everybody has a computer at home. I know computers. I have a computer at home. I have a Mac at home. I have a PC at home. I have whatever it is at home, and we think that we already know it. And so I think there's still that set and forget mentality.
Yeah,
I
'cause it
have-
works most of the time,
I
right?
have antivirus on it. I have, EDR, whatever that it is, and I have it on my computer. So I put it on. It's new and it's updating, so I'm good.
It's a tool.
It's a tool.
It's a tool.
Right.
It's there.
And it's there.
It's doing something.
And it's updated all the time because it
Yeah.
is. It's
Yeah.
going to keep. But so yeah, we can't have that set and forget anymore. It's with AI and
Is it called a risk matrix? Is that
the risk profile.
You-
There's a risk matrix,
yeah,
a risk profile.
and that's to create what document? The business continuity, or what was it? Or is it just part?
That's just part of business continuity.
Okay, so what I find is that you have to ask yourself as a business owner, if I lose access to my technology, what's the lost opportunity cost? What's going to happen? Now, if you lose it for 10 minutes, it's probably no big deal. If you lose it for 10 days,
Right.
that's another. In fact, didn't we just experience recently in the auto industry those people?
More than 10 days.
Yeah, somebody on, we don't need to get into naming names,
No.
but like, is somebody that one of the major management systems, right, went down, and they were down for over 2 weeks, right? And so all those business owners had to go on a manual system that they probably never really even contemplated. You're putting me through an exercise right now where you're going, okay, great. So what happens if we lost power? All right, but, well, how often does that happen? And, we have a generator so we could keep critical systems up. So you actually have to go through this process, right, to find out where the gotchas are, where the gaps
Right.
are.
So we do the risk assessment that we do every year that we make you read and make sure you know what it says and sign off on so that
Yeah, it's good airplane. It's good airplane reading.
That's right. But yeah, and if you think about it too, so even with the which shall not be said name, where they were out for so long, but you also have regular supply chain issues,
Sure,
and there was
that's going to be that's probably the fastest
where
growing
a
company.
tool went out and half the world went out for a while. So that was another one that happened that we won't mention.
Yeah.
So
Half the world did go down.
so it's yeah, you don't know, and that's what it's all about right there. So what is the risk? So if you're not setting IT as a priority, then your risk is going to be actually very high because you haven't thought about what happens when.
Right.
And you're right, we have redundant just about everything, and we work off of laptops. So that if power goes out, we still get going anyway, and then we have the generator for the servers.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So, you're actually seeing, because you go in and you participate with onboarding, you participate with ongoing client relationships and things like that. What are some things you could share with the audience as red flags that maybe a business has the wrong, let's say, IT partner?
Well, I think that if you're not getting anything answered when you call in, or if you call in and all you ever get is an answering machine, you might want to think about somebody else. There's nothing wrong with going into voicemail, but you should get a reply back very quickly. I think that if you don't have any of the admin passwords for any of your systems, um, that's a huge red flag because that means really they're doing everything, and when they do walk away, they have all control.
If you have a bad breakup.
Yeah, it's a very bad breakup. I think that just it should be a partnership. I don't think it should be that provider anymore. That this is here you go. I'm going to take care of this 100%. Which is there's nothing wrong once again with taking care of it, but you have to share a little bit of that. And the owner still owns all the risk and all the responsibility, even if the IT company comes in and says, "Here you are." They're still responsible for their business. No matter
100%. Yeah, exactly. And they should feel they should feel really comfortable. Because IT is such a complex thing nowadays, right? And we're all so dependent on it, right? Yeah. If we misplace our phones, have you ever misplaced your phones? It was in your back pocket. You should,
Yeah.
your heart skips a beat. And oh, thank God. IT is the same way. And so for me, the things I would recommend people look at are how proactive is your partner, IT partner. In other words, is their financial model what we call break fix? Break fix is designed to fix something after it's broken, and you're paying by the hour. So if I'm on a break fix model, am I motivated as a IT provider to take less time or to take more time?
Well, that's a moral question more than anything else. You would hope in an ideal society that they would take
But since
less
we
time because
don't
that's
live in
what
an
it
ideal
takes. Yeah,
society,
they're going to try.
they're motivated. In other words, if it takes them longer than they thought, it's no big deal.
Right.
How's that?
Or even
I'm
if
saying
they're
anybody's malicious.
yeah, or even if they're unsure, you might be getting charged for research.
Right.
I don't know how to fix it, but I'm going to charge you the
Yes.
3 hours
Yeah.
to
Oh, I
figure
can
out
handle
how to
it.
do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, our model and the model that we recommend in the book is a flat fee. And that flat fee includes an unlimited amount of support, right?
Right.
So, the more our clients call us, the less we make, right?
Correct.
It also means the less our client makes, because if their employees are having to get on the phone and deal with us on a support issue, they're not being productive. So it's a lose-lose situation, right?
Right.
And so to me, I would look for, do they proactively analyze the tickets, look for trends? Do we have a dying piece of hardware that's causing a lot of issues, or the cooling mechanism starting to go? We can see that it's 5 years old. It's time. So why wait for it to fail, right? Whatever it is, we're being proactive, right? To me, that's an important component of it. And the other thing is proactive quarterly reviews,
Absolutely.
right? And so, do you get an honest, meaning does it happen? Regularly scheduled meeting with leadership, right? Because if I'm an owner and I don't know a whole lot about IT, I still want to be part of a quarterly technology briefing, security briefing. I want to know oh, what's the latest trends? What's going on out there?
Right.
Because I can look out for them.
Right. And I think that also you want, once again, it goes back to what you were saying, is leadership engaged? Because if leadership's not engaged, really it's not going to get done what needs to get done. There's no real interest. There's a disinterest in IT. And if there's a disinterest in IT, then you're going to let that slide. And once again, it goes
Yeah.
back to that.
Yeah, and most people are disinterested in what they don't understand, or have a lot of interest in, of course. But if it's confusing, most people aren't going to be interested.
Yeah, and I think that also if you get into the too much of the techie,
Right.
in those meetings that we're talking about, so those quarterlies, it should be at a high level. We should be talking risk. This is what's going on in the world. This is what the threat landscape is. This is what the risks could be to your business. But this is what we're doing to make sure that you're not having these risks.
Absolutely. Well, cool. So, kind of jumping into a chapter in the book, I have a whole chapter in there about what advice I give when selecting. So, we just kind of did the opposite. What to look for, and red flags. Obviously, you could turn those around and flip them around, and those would be things to look for. Right? Do you have any recommendations, regardless of the book? Just because you have real life experience, what are some mistakes they could make when looking for an IT provider, and not, just basics?
Yeah, I think the basics are really, it goes back to what we were saying earlier at the beginning, culture. Do they fit into your culture? Do they work with you with the way that you understand? Because once again, you can get that highly technical person that you have no clue what they're saying and you don't know what they're really doing,
Right.
which doesn't help. I think that, and it goes back to making sure that when you're talking to them, no hostage. If they're going to hold you hostage, then you've got an issue.
Nothing's forever, right?
No.
I mean, literally, right? So even if you stay with the company for 20 years, right? And then maybe it gets sold, right? And now the buyer doesn't, just wants to stick with who they have.
Right.
No offense to the, whatever, right? How will that company contractually work with this?
Right.
Yeah. So I can't stress that enough.
Yeah.
We actually have a no hostage guarantee certificate. I should have brought that.
Yeah. But yeah, I think that's really a big one. And even when dealing with the SLAs themselves, how quickly are you going to be responding to me when I call, when I put in a ticket?
It's on the
if I do
list.
an
It's a good one.
email?
Yeah.
I think that's an important one. I mean, there's so many little nuances, but I think that culturally it's important.
And I don't actually have culture as on my list, and you've brought it up 2 times, and I think it's great. You should ask for their core values. Ask the provider, what are your company's core values, and find out what they are. Like one of ours is always be learning. So we really emphasize and will pay for and give the time and all that kind of stuff, because we're in the technology and security business. Our people need to stay current. So you brought up SLA, that's on the list for sure. Read it. And if it's written like you need an attorney to understand it, that's a red flag. It should be easily understood. What are you doing for me? And what happens if you don't?
Right.
It just should be written in plain English.
I think and that is a good one. What are you doing for me? That it should be clear. You should understand what they're going to come in and do. There should be, if you're going to do any work, statement of work always, right? And SOW very clearly states out, this is what we're doing. This is how we're going to do it, both for the service and if there's any other project work that's going to be done with it.
Right. We've mentioned one already as well, price, right? So price is important, right? So you can be being overcharged for things, right? So go ahead and get three quotes, but really comparing price without also comparing the SOW is you might not be comparing apples to apples. You might say, all of these things are included, right? Mm-hmm. But then when you read the SOW, they're really not monitoring them, or they're really not going to take action on them, or whatever it is. Whereas, we do.
Right.
So you really want to do that.
And then you can look at tools and talent as well. If they're just selling you a tool with no talent behind it,
well, that's going to be cheap.
Yeah. And if you're getting talent behind it, so you have a dedicated group, which most of your SOCs and NOCs will have. They'll have someone that's presented to the company, this is your dedicated group. So.
Absolutely. Yeah. And let's see here. I'm just looking at my list here. We have is a 90-day cancellation. So we want somebody to feel really comfortable. The first 90 days, if you don't shine in the first 90 days, unfortunately, it's going to leave a bad taste in a client's.
I always find it interesting because if you think about it, and I don't think we don't do it on purpose, but your first 90 days, it's like when you go on your first date
Right.
or when you go and do something, that's the best they're going to be because they're going to be there 100% and they're in and you're learning, you're finding out what the environment is, you're excited. Um, and then, 10 years down the road, you're not as excited. But I think that it's interesting that a lot of people don't look at that first 90 days, that it is so important that you're looking at who's helping you, how they're helping you, and what you see is very important.
Absolutely. Good. Just as a reminder, you can get a free download of the book. Just look for the link below. And if you're remotely going to be interviewing or considering hiring or replacing whatever IT resources, security resources, it's a great read. So go ahead and do that. So I have just like one more sort of topic, and then I think we can wrap this one up. Are you seeing any trends, good, bad, or indifferent, when it comes to IT and as it relates to business?
Well, I think there's the big one on everybody's lips right now is AI, right? So AI, yeah, the AI trends right now, it's really interesting. We still say it's in its infancy. It's still crawling. We still really don't have a good grasp on what it is. And then we have all of these different businesses that have our data that are using AI to harness it better. So we have privacy issues now that are going to be coming up again.
Even greater privacy issues, right?
Yeah,
Like
so
Amazon, sending you a suggested item to purchase is one thing for AI, right?
right.
Or an algorithm, but now, like you just said, they're uploading all this data into learning libraries, right?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And making their own private libraries and then pulling from the other larger ones, your Googles, your Meta.
Yeah, what I'm telling people about AI is that we're in the wild, wild west stage of the technology, and I mean that, there's no legislation in place yet to protect
Nope.
anybody. There's no specific leader yet. There's a bunch of behemoths, trying to figure it out, and there's no, codified, everyday tools. There are some, right, that are being used,
Right.
ChatGPT, and maybe antivirus is starting to use it or whatever it is. But there's not the, letter writing AI tool that's it's starting to get incorporated into Microsoft Word and other
Actually,
email
yeah.
tools and stuff like
There
that.
are a lot out there, believe it or not.
Okay.
There's a couple of tools that you can go to because there's a lot out there. So for that,
But they're incorporating it, right?
slowly but surely, most of your OSs are incorporating. Google's incorporating. Everybody's incorporating it. I think that probably the biggest thing for me right now when it comes to AI is people, they don't know. They just want to use it and they don't understand really what they're doing. And you have people putting databases into Chat GPT. Or they're putting in their personal information
Yeah, they're
into it to try
uploading
and figure it out,
into
not
public
realizing that
libraries.
it's now public. And it's like a picture when we first started. You put your picture in the internet, where is it? It's in the internet. You're not deleting it.
Ever.
Um,
Yeah.
And also, we have the issue now with brokers that even the brokers are uh, they're being breached. So now we have to deal with brokers
huge one,
being
yeah.
breached. So AI is making that happen faster. They're saying now that when there's a 0-day vulnerability, it's about 20 minutes
Wow.
for someone to figure out how to get past it.
0 day means it hasn't been.
It hasn't been fixed. It's just been found today. They don't have a patch for it yet. And you need to figure out how you're going to protect your environment.
So the race is on at that
The
point.
race is on at that
Yeah.
point. Most
Yeah.
of the time, hopefully the good guy finds it. So when you hear about the 0-day, they already have the patch.
Absolutely. Well, cool. My closing on this would be that most business owners, and I've said this already, don't really identify that there's a difference between IT and security.
Absolutely.
And so, sort of tools versus talent, like whatever it is, right? And if we could get anything across to a business owner that there's more to security than antivirus, spam filtering, anti-malware. That's not even the tip of the iceberg, right? It's not even like literal. That's what we call table stakes. It's just you need those things, period. But
Right.
there's a whole lot more strategy involved when it comes to security.
Well, you can even take that to the IT side as well. The fact that there's more to just doing patches than turning on automatic patching from Microsoft
100%.
or from Mac.
Yeah.
You need to be able to watch it, make sure you understand that someone didn't turn it off,
Right.
so it doesn't get patched,
Yeah.
or an applications that aren't being updated that need to get updated, or the network is running at 100 megs instead of gig, which is what everything should be at. So it's slowing down your network. I mean, it's both sides.
It's endless.
Yeah.
And if you're a one man show or whatever it is, then it's impossible, even if you never slept, to keep up with all this. So it's better to, like, if you need medical help, you go to, a specialist, right? Or whatever it is, or an attorney or whatever it is. So we have these different specialties in house to help our clients. Tim, it's been great. We're going to close out the season with a great episode.
Love it.
And one of my favorite guests. So I really appreciate your time.
Thank you. You're one of my favorite bosses.
Oh, well, thanks. To subscribe to stay updated on the latest releases and insightful discussions. If you're interested and need any help with your cybersecurity, click the link below. Until next time, bye-bye.